and welcome to Big Muddy Mayhem, the podcast where we talk about true crime and bad behavior in the Midwest.
Each week we'll bring you 2 stories from the heartland that might break your heart, but we hope to entertain you along the way.
I'm Tracey Laricha.
And I'm Janet O'Brien.
Hello! Hello, Janet. How are you?
I'm good. I'm surprisingly very good. Well, I guess not surprisingly, but I'm good.
Well, I was going to say, why the surprise?
There is no surprise. Well, I mean, the viewers don't. I mean, the listeners don't know, but I have a new job.
Right. So that is good, though. That's good news.
Oh, my goodness.
And you like it so far?
Very, 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 very much. I mean, yes, it's only the first week.
But you can kind of tell. I feel like by the time we get to our age,
you're just like, oh yeah, this is going to be fine.
Yeah. As you know, I started a new position myself, like right at the first of the year.
Right.
And I could tell in the first week, I'm like, oh, we're going to get along just fine.
Right.
Like, this is going to be good. So I am glad that you found a good spot, and
Blue has found a toy.
Blue has found a very honored, which we might need to take away from her. Come here, baby. No, you can't have the water right now. Unless you want to go in there. We're not playing fetch. All right, well, we'll see, listeners. I mean, look, if you listen to the podcast, then you know that we record in a house full of animals over here. And sometimes they're just going to be in the background. It's just, I've given up. Given up. We don't let them distract us from the stories, but like I'm sorry if you're the sorry, not sorry. There's just a lot of pets here.
Oh my goodness, right.
Okay.
So I think we have 2 stories.
We do have 2 stories, and I believe that I go first this week.
Yeah, okay.
And so this was a listener suggestion that came to us a while ago, and this one comes from Ed.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Ed.
Hi, Ed.
And I know this has been kind of on my list for a little while, but I never really, I don't know, I don't know why I kept, pushing it off.
Right.
But this week I decided not to. It might have been just because I didn't know what the heck else to pick. So, hey, listeners, write into us and give us suggestions.
Yeah, suggestions really help. You get to hear that story. You're going to I'd like to know a little bit more. I know these 2 gals who might do a podcast and tell me more about it.
That's right. And we'll shout you out on it, too.
Absolutely.
So, bigmuddymayhem@gmail.com, Janet, right? That's where they can send that?
Absolutely. Or you can use Facebook Messenger to our Facebook channel.
Right, to our Facebook channel as well. Goodness, Blue. All righty.
Okay.
Well, Janet, I am going to tell you the story of the death of Meriwether Lewis.
Ooh.
Do you know anything about this?
No, maybe a little. I don't know.
So before Ed had sent the suggestion to us, I knew plenty about the Lewis and Clark expedition.
Right.
But I hadn't ever heard about the idea that Meriwether Lewis's death was perhaps a little sus, as the kids would say.
Okay, so just so you know, both of our stories have something in connection.
How do we do it?
I don't know.
I was almost even going to ask you when you came over, hey, is yours historic? Because
mine's historic, but not in the same time.
Not in the same way. Okay.
But that part right
Suspicious death?
Yes.
We always manage to have something in common.
Exactly.
We are sisters but not twins when we choose our stories. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about the death of Meriwether Lewis. So just to start out, if you aren't somebody that is from Missouri that has had Lewis and Clark kind of
jammed down your throat,
hammered into you from infancy. Meriwether Lewis was born in 1774 in Virginia. His mother is a naturalist. He does not have any formal education until the age of 13, so he spends most of his time, like his mom, I think, his father, I believe, dies early, and so he grows up with his mom and his stepdad. But his mother is kind of... You know how every town has that naturalist, that witchy woman?
Yes, always.
The person that can heal, that knows what to do for a fever and what to do for your gout and all of that. Well, his mother is that woman in their community. So he spends most of his life in the woods, and or most of his youth, rather, in the woods. So he's super interested in botany. He knows different plants and likes to kind of study them and learn, like, their purposes. He's also a naturalist. He follows and, like, observes animals and, like, loves to, I've never seen that bird before.
Right,
like,
absolutely,
kind of
yes.
Which is why, after being Thomas Jefferson's secretary, like, secretary to the president, Jefferson picks him to lead the Corps of Discovery.
Yes.
A.K.A. the Lewis and Clark Expedition. Right. But they didn't know it was going to be the Lewis and Clark Expedition. They called it the Corps of Discovery. Mm-hmm. They set out and they went on a 2.5
years,
journey.
Right.
Nobody thought they were coming back.
Right. They thought, they're probably all dead.
Like a year in, Jefferson's like, well...
Only one died.
Only one person died, and it was, he died of appendicitis. And also, only one person suffered, like, a gunshot. Like, guns were never fired in anger. There was only one person that suffered a gunshot wound on the expedition, and it was a dude that, I don't know how you do this, but he was cleaning his gun, and he shot himself in the buttocks.
Yes. Oh, my God.
So somebody got shot in the ass, and somebody died of appendicitis. Yeah. But otherwise, everybody came home.
My dad and I've only read part of it. My dad read the whole thing. It's the journals of Lewis and Clark. And they are, like, word for word what they wrote down.
We're going to get to this. Yes, we're going to dive into that.
They walked 27 miles a day.
It was an 8,000-mile journey all the way, like from start to finish. So Lewis, as you mentioned, your dad read the journals. Lewis is a meticulous record keeper,
yes. Mm-hmm.
And he journals daily. He writes down every little detail because, I mean, you don't want to forget it. And you're seeing things no one has seen before, or recording things that no one has recorded before. So he journals almost constantly during this 2.5-year journey, except when he's super depressed. Or when he's really, really drunk. Or both.
Or both.
Most likely both.
Probably both.
So the Lewis family does have a history of bipolar disorder. And he is also... Lewis himself was kind of a hopeless romantic, but he's kind of like a try too hard, you know, like he's very romantic. He tries to like woo people, but he's, you know, he is the literary equivalent of like the dude that gives unsolicited back rubs and has like sweaty palms. Like he's a nice guy, but he's almost too nice. He just kind of gives the ick a little bit.
Oh, yeah. No, yep.
So he does kind of try to pursue a couple of ladies early on, and he's sort of like rebuffed by them. Either they've got the ick, or else they're into someone else, or else, or he could have also been one of those people that just didn't put his case out there hard enough.
Right.
You know, like,
well, I tried.
And
Mom, I'm just going to stay in my room and play my video games. I tried.
Or he's like, I blinked at her once and she didn't blink back. So obviously she'll never love me. Right. So he is kind of a frustrated, hopeless romantic. And he is kind of getting down on himself about it. Well... Remember I said he grew up in Virginia?
Yeah.
He grew up very near Thomas Jefferson. So Jefferson kind of also like is like, oh man, Lewis needs something.
He needs something. He doesn't have game.
He needs something to focus on though. He needs like a purpose.
Sure.
So when Jefferson decides to set out with the Corps of, or to fund and like initiate the Corps of Discovery, he's like, well, I've got this guy that knows everything about plants, everything about animals. He's really good at taking notes, and he kind of needs something to do.
Right.
So Jefferson picks him to lead the Corps of Discovery. Nice. Now, Lewis does immediately appoint Clark as his co-captain and is like, nope, I'm not leading the expedition and you're like underneath me. We're going to head this ship together.
Nice.
And so, yeah, like that's kind of, it is kind of nice.
Yeah. Right.
And they set out, we aren't going to get into the whole like Corps of Discovery, Lewis and Clark expedition right now. We're focusing on what's going on with our boy Lewis.
Right.
And so he goes out and he is though kind of the historian, the note taker.
Right.
For this expedition. And there are gaps in the expedition journals that correspond with Lewis's depressive states. Like if you take a look at the little bit of writing that we have from other people, you can be like, oh, when he's in a funk, he stops writing.
Right. Yeah, I could tell that in the journals because when you're reading them, it's like once you start to getting the Clark is just very, very matter of fact. Like, this not whole sentences, just like, here's some numbers. This is, how long we walked. What, just.
Clark was busy chasing tail most of the time. Honestly, in fact, at one point in time, one of the books that I read about the expedition, Meriwether Lewis might have been one of the only people, if not the only person, that came back from that journey without having contracted an STD.
Strange.
Because everybody else is just like, girls? Ooh, like anytime they find women, then they're like, hey. But at one point, Lewis writes in his own journal, like during one of these depressive states, he says that he felt like he has wasted his life and hasn't contributed to society in any true way. This is as he is leading, again, a 2.5-year, 8,000-mile journey that tells us everything that we knew about, that expands the country.
Right, absolutely.
I feel like I deserve a little treat when I get my laundry folded, right?
You're right.
But he's just like, I haven't really done anything. And post-expedition, the blues kind of hit him even harder.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So after they come back and Jefferson and everybody is just like, holy shit, you guys are alive still?
All right. Oh! We should do something.
Almost everybody does get accolades, land, positions, etc., except for York, and we're going to talk about him another time because that's its own story.
Okay.
Like he is his own story and deserves his own story.
Got it.
Because it hasn't been told enough.
Okay, great.
But after the expedition, Jefferson appoints Lewis as the governor of the new Louisiana Territory. Who better?
Right.
He literally found it. But Lewis, he kind of hates having a desk job. He is not meant for political office.
Oh, right.
He's a nature boy.
Yeah.
Right? He's a creature of the woods. He belongs out there, not stuck in an office trying to make desk job decisions.
Right, exactly.
And he wants two things at this point in his life. Number one, as always, he wants a wife. That is kind of the through line for his whole life. He really
wants a wife.
He wants a wife. Yeah, he wants someone that, will nurture him and care for him. And I think it might be he was so close to his mom that he kind of misses that kind of presence. So not that he wants a wife to, mommy him and baby him, but he misses having that, supportive, feminine presence.
Right.
He also wants to, because he's concerned about his legacy, he wants to write about his life and the journey. Fails at the wife thing. He kind of tries, maybe makes a play a couple of other times, but then in writing to his friends, he says that he doesn't think that love is ever going to find him. And he refers to himself as a fusty, musty, rusty old bachelor. Where was Love is Blind?
Right!
When he needed it. He is 35 years old, so he thinks that, I'm a fusty, musty, rusty old bachelor.
He's a has-been.
He's a has-been. He's 35!
Oh, my God.
But he does finish his writing, though. Meanwhile, back in D.C., his friend and supporter Thomas Jefferson is no longer in office.
Yeah.
So this is kind of another, oof, for Lewis. Thomas Jefferson isn't in office. His successor, James Madison, replaces the entire cabinet.
Yep.
And the Secretary of War that he puts in as a replacement takes a look at the charges that Lewis has incurred as governor of the territory and says, we're not going to pay these. So Lewis has put himself out there in a professional capacity, and now the new administration is just not going to pay the bills.
Oh, huh.
Current references only.
Exactly.
Also, so fails to cover the debts that Lewis incurred in office. So now, people are kind of starting to come for him personally. So Lewis is lonely. Mm-hmm. There are no Tinder matches. He is in debt. He is depressed. He also has kind of an inclination towards alcoholism because he is depressed.
Yeah.
Right. So he's in kind of hot water. But he has finished all of the writing. So he's going to gather up all of his papers, and he decides that he is going to set off to D.C. and go see Thomas Jefferson about it. Oh. Jefferson, while no longer president, is still very influential politically, so maybe they can figure something out. So he goes off to Jefferson to go see Jefferson to deliver the journals. September 4th, 1809.
Okay.
Lewis starts off up the Mississippi, but then he ends up getting off of the river that he knows to go along the Natchez Trace. So this is a land route that is also referred to at the time as the Devil's Backbone.
Oh, okay.
Because it kind of goes every which way, the terrain is rough, and it's plagued by robbers.
Oh,
do you remember the Samuel Mason episode we did about the Ohio River Pirates and also Cave-In Rock and Alf? It's kind of like that, but on land.
But on land, on a road, on a weird road.
But Lewis chooses this for two reasons that I can find. Number one, he wants to avoid the climate in New Orleans because it's so hot and steamy. And also, if he gets close to New Orleans, he's worried that they might be ambushed by the British.
Oh, okay.
And the British might take his journals or papers, and he doesn't want those to fall into the wrong hands.
Right, absolutely.
So he decides, he's like, all right, fuck it, we're doing the Devil's Backbone. Along the way, he does stop off at one point, and he writes a will. Your face. He writes a will, you do when you're in your 30s.
That's not a good sign.
And just leaving for a work trip. He leaves anything left after all debts are paid. He's like, after all my debts are paid, anything else that I have, I want to leave to my mother.
Okay.
So again, he and his mom were really close.
Right.
So he's on this journey. And they stop at Fort Pickering, I think, for a week or so. And then, straight on, heading towards D.C. He is with James Neely.
Okay.
We're going to remember that name.
Okay.
James Neely is a Chickasaw Indian agent. So one of the people that goes on expeditions with government folks to, to help them, navigate and communicate with any, indigenous Native American people, First Peoples that they would encounter along the way. Neely also brings his servant. Some sources said that they didn't know his name. I saw one that said his name was Tom.
Okay.
So we're going to call him that.
Okay.
Okay. Lewis also has his own manservant that is along with him. He is a man named Parnier.
Parnier, okay.
And this is a free person of color.
Oh, okay.
That is traveling along with him and acting like as Lewis's valet. And finally, Seaman!
So the dog!
When they set out on the Lewis and Clark expedition, Lewis paid $20, which was a fair chunk of change back then, to buy a Newfoundland dog named Seaman that went with them on the whole entire journey. So this dog went on like the world's longest float trip.
They have a statue of him right in downtown St. Charles.
They do. There is a great statue downtown St. Charles. There's also one downtown St. Louis at the Drury Inn. In the lobby. There is a statue of the whole Corps of Discovery.
Oh my gosh.
And Seaman is depicted there too.
Cool.
So it's Lewis, it's Neely, it's possibly Tom, it's Parnier, and it's Seaman. And they all set out together. And along the way, Lewis does seem a little off.
Okay.
There are a couple of people, some folks that were at Fort Pickering, some folks that were like traveling with him that referred to him as deranged.
Oh, no.
Now, what we do know, so we've got Lewis, he is kind of a depressive person to begin with. He is probably a full-blown alcoholic by this point. He may have also had malaria.
Yeah, I could see that.
Or possibly, some people have said he may have also had syphilis. Which, that part doesn't seem right to me.
Right.
Because he was a romantic. There was, there was, not to be too crude, but there was like pussy thick on the floor on this expedition, and he never...
He didn't go for it.
He didn't go for it. Like, he wanted love, not sex.
Right.
So, the syphilis thing, I don't know if I believe it. So, could be malaria, could be alcoholism, could be depression. Some people also said laudanum or possibly opium.
Oh, who knows?
I mean, all very in vogue at that time.
Exactly.
He apparently at some point in time, he did write a letter to Clark. And what I couldn't figure out is why we have record of the fact that he wrote a letter to Clark, but we never did see the letter.
Yeah, that is weird.
I mean, stuff goes lost in the mail all the time, but also... when I send a letter, I don't also write down that maybe he did in a journal, though.
Yeah.
You know, that he sent a letter. That letter has never been recovered. A couple of people said that he might have made a couple of attempts on his life along the way, but there are no details.
Right.
And that seems like the sort of thing that you might take note of.
Absolutely. Like, there's something going on.
Yeah.
Right.
So we are at October 7th, 1809. Neely peels off from the group to go look for some horses that they were bringing with them that escaped.
Okay.
All right. But he sends Lewis, Parnier, and Tom on ahead. Like, I'll catch up with y'all.
Okay.
Now, it is weird that there were two people that were, like, in service, and Neely is the one that goes to look for horses.
Yeah, that is weird.
Rather than like, hey, Tom, go find these horses.
Right.
So the trio now stops on October 10th, 1809, at a place called Grinder's Stand. Now, this is back in the day when you're traveling, and really all that you have to do is like a little log cabin. I mean, this is an inn. Mostly couples, sometimes like widows. Like,
right.
Here's a bed. Here's some stew.
As long as you're not stopping at the Bender family, you'll probably be okay.
Exactly. Not with the bloody Benders, but yeah, that sort of thing. So I was only able to find a painting of Grinder's Stand.
Okay.
And it is apparently, it's like 70 miles outside of Nashville. Mr. Grinder is away
Oh.
But Mrs. Grinder puts Lewis up in one of the rooms and, like, gets everybody fed, and then puts the servants in the stables / hayloft.
Gotcha.
Okay? According to her, although she will change her story many times, she says that Lewis seemed odd. And that's the word that is used in all accounts, is Lewis just seemed odd.
Okay. Huh.
Early in the morning of the next day, October 11th, 1809, Mrs. Grinder says that she wakens in the middle of the night and she hears 2 gunshots. One, and then a minute later, another.
Oh, no.
So she doesn't go check it out.
Maybe she doesn't want to get shot.
She claims she's too afraid.
Yeah,
So
that's
right.
No.
So she doesn't go see what's going on.
No.
But hours later, she hears
Oh no.
Lewis, like, scraping around, crawling around on the floor, and what sounds like the ladle that was near, like, the basin, like, scraping. You know.
No.
And he's out loud, like, pleading for water. So you're an innkeeper. You've got a possibly shot guest crawling around on the floor of his hotel room, begging for water. What do?
You go check on him at this point?
She goes out to the hayloft and tells the servants, "Hey,
you need to go check on your friend. I'm not doing it." You know what? That's okay. I get it.
I mean, given the circumstances, all right, like, there's part of me that I'm like, oh, that's awful, but also, we've all been there, Mrs. G. We get you. It's okay. We are history, and we will forgive you a little bit for that. So they bring the servants in. Lewis has been shot in the head and also in the chest.
Oh my God.
With a .69 caliber pistol. Do you know what that looks like?
No.
I did not either, so I had to look it up.
Uh-huh.
This is a big ass gun.
Holy cow. You don't want to get shot with that. It's got 2 barrels, right?
Maybe.
Maybe,
yeah.
I don't know. It's big.
Or I think that's the first one, I think, is where you tamp the powder down. But it fires, instead of a bullet, it fires something a little bit more like a musket ball.
Yeah.
Like a big, big gun with a big, big projectile. And he's been shot twice with this big ass gun. Now, Lewis was one of, like, the best marksmen on the expedition.
Oh.
So, if he is trying to attempt on his own life,
he would have gotten it the first time.
He won, right? Like, in the head and also in the chest. Like, I can't see which one would be, like, if you're in the chest, are you, like, how do you have the wherewithal to shoot yourself in the head? And if you shoot yourself in the head, how do you have the wherewithal
to shoot yourself again in the chest?
In the chest. Records state, sorry, yeah, I hope you're not eating lunch, Muddy Buddies, but his brains are exposed. And 2 hours later, Lewis gives his last words. And he says, "I am no coward, but I am so strong. It is so hard to die." So, like, he was pleading for death.
Oh, wow.
Kind of at this point. "I'm no coward, but I'm so strong. It is so hard to die." And then he passes away. Now, almost immediately after this happens, like that same day, guess who shows up?
Clark?
No.
Oh, the
Neely!
Oh.
Guess who doesn't show up? Any MFing horses.
Oh my
Now, Neely shows up, and I mean, he wasn't able to find the horses, but once he gets there, he is Johnny on the spot, right?
Oh my God.
He buries Lewis immediately. He then takes all of Lewis's stuff and heads out to Nashville, next stop along the way.
Oh my God.
Once he gets to Nashville, then and only then does he write Thomas Jefferson and say, hey! So, we had a little hiccup.
There's one less person with us.
Everything's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I have everything except the horses. And Jefferson does, though, knowing what he knows of Lewis, Jefferson immediately believes that, like, yeah, that probably was, an instance where Lewis, like, took his own life.
Right.
Also, Clark, of all people, absolutely 100% when he gets the news, he is not surprised at all.
Oh.
And Clark says, I fear that the weight of his mind has overcome him. I mean, granted, yeah, you've watched this guy kind of like boohoo his way down, from
right.
Missouri all the way to the Gulf of Mexico for like 2.5 years. But also, no note.
No note? Oh.
From the constant journalist?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's weird to me.
Right. Sorry, pardon me.
He sent a text. Dear Janet, stop. Totally didn't do this to myself. Stop. Way better shot than you thought. Stop. Later, Neely will give the whole account, like pretty much the records that we have of Lewis's death are all written by Neely. And he said that Lewis had also, like, cut himself on his arms and legs. I'm like, before or after he shot himself twice, like with his brains hanging out.
Right.
In addition to shooting himself twice with that big, huge gun. Now, Neely is the record keeper, and this is the account that history has gone by. But, Janet, may I remind you, Neely was not there. Nobody was there. And Mrs. Grinder, she will change her story. In some evidence, like some incidents of her account, she will say that she was with Lewis when he died and that she tried to give him water. And then sometimes she'll say, I was just too scared, so I don't think there was anyone in the room with them.
Oh, my God.
I went to get the servants. In another account, she says that Parnier was with Lewis when he died. I mean, there's just 3 stories. Maybe one of them's true.
Don't know.
Maybe one of them are. So, was Meriwether Lewis murdered?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, Lewis's family thought so too. Like, they really do think that he was murdered, but also I can understand. No one wants to feel like a person that you love has, chosen to end their own life.
Right, exactly.
That's awful. And if he didn't, well, then no one likes to think about a person that they love being murdered.
Right.
Who are our suspects?
Yeah, who are the suspects? I would say Neely is on top of the list.
Neely is the top of the list. Number 1, he wasn't there. Why is he the class secretary all of a sudden?
Right.
Number 2, he takes all of the stuff. And we don't really have a full account of all of that and where it all ended up and, if it was all kept together. And also, remember, Lewis was in debt and had just written a will saying, after my debts are paid, everything I own goes to my mother.
Oh, right.
Neely goes to Lewis's family almost before the body is cold and says, hey, BT Dubs, Meriwether owed me money. And, like, tries to get money from Lewis's family. It's possible that Parnier was kind of in on this, too.
Oh, I see.
Because as they are, like, getting rid of Lewis's body and all of his things, Parnier is wearing Lewis's clothes, his, like, watch. And he's like, he gave them to me. Now, that could very well be true.
Right.
That could very well be true. This was, probably the closest person that he had in his day-to-day life was his valet.
Right.
And so, yeah, sure, fine. Maybe there's nothing sketchy there.
Right.
But maybe there is. One rabbit hole I went down said that it could have possibly been Jefferson putting a hit out on Lewis.
That's weird.
Because he wasn't sure or was concerned about what all might be in the journals.
Oh.
So, like, I need to... But that doesn't hold water with me because Lewis was bringing the journals to Jefferson.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, I don't
so
think
if you needed to, like, redact something...
Yeah.
do it that. Third suspect. Mr. Grinder.
Oh.
Which is not just like somebody on a bad, like, naughty dating app. No, not bad, but like, we're not slut-shaming here on Big Money Mayhem. Mr. Grinder is not just somebody on a dating app. This is the owner of the hotel.
Right.
Might have been that he came back to Grinder's stand and was like, because everybody else was over in the loft.
Oh, okay.
Because they were, like, the servants and also persons of color. So Mrs. Grinder wouldn't put them, like, in the house.
Gotcha.
So maybe if he came home and found his wife and some rando staying together in my house,
Right.
It could have just been... typical 1800s patriarchal bullshit.
Right, absolutely.
Also, the Grinders were dirt poor, which is why they had this little, like, inn. Like, they made a living.
Right.
Hoping that travelers would come by.
Sure.
But shortly after Lewis dies, they buy some more land. They get a bigger space. They buy enslaved people. Like, all of a sudden, they've got that kind of money.
That's weird.
Yeah. And finally, our last suspect is they were along the Natchez Trace, which was known for robbers. Which, that could be the case, but also, I mean, he's carrying, like, botany specimens and letters and stuff.
Right.
It's not like he's got a chest of gold. So... to me, it feels like if it is murder...
It was Neely.
Neely or someone was paid by somebody else.
Right.
Like, whoever did it, it feels like somebody was paid by somebody else. Like, Lewis was in debt. So it's not like he had anything.
Right, exactly.
It wasn't just, like, outright larceny, Right. But Janet.
Tracy.
We will probably never know because this is me doing another The most I can tell you is that in 2009, descendants of Lewis and also local historians launched a campaign, and they really tried hard to be able to exhume Lewis from his grave.
Oh, wow.
200 years later. Like the ultimate cold case.
Yeah.
Well, they were like, if we can exhume the body, we now have the science where we could tell. Did he have malaria? Did he have syphilis?
Right.
Did he...
it would answer some, like...
questions.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But... Lewis is buried here at Grinders Stone, which is like a monument at Grinders Stand.
Yeah.
And so, Lewis is buried right there where he died, near the where the log cabin inn was. And that is now a National Historic Monument, which is lovely. But the National Park Service, where Grinders Stand is located, is now a historic site. And they were like, we're not going to tear up an entire park for this. There is also a replica cabin there that is exactly like what Grinders Stand looked like on the last evening of Meriwether Lewis's life. I do have one sad coda. If you, Muddy Buddies, are having just a bad day and you don't want to hear something sad, maybe skip ahead like 30, 60 seconds because this is what's not nice here. After Lewis died, Seaman, the dog, would not leave the body until they took it away, and then went and was like one of those stories where dogs like paw like near on the ground near where their master is buried, and he, quote, refused comfort and food and water for days, and then died very soon after, completely out of grief after the loss of his person. They've been on that so much together. Of course. So we don't deserve dogs.
No, we don't.
We don't know what happened to Meriwether Lewis. And I am sorry for like ending with a big bummer. I hope you've got a fun story about murder or something.
I do. I have a fun story.
And my sources today were history.nd.gov, which is the North Dakota State Historical Society, time.com, Smithsonian Magazine, the Southern Gothic Podcast, Stuff You Missed in History Class.com, Mysterious Circumstances, The Death of Meriwether Lewis is the Southern Gothic episode, and then also a really excellent and very long book that I would recommend to anyone interested in the expedition. It is called Undaunted Courage, and it's written by Stephen Ambrose.
Nice.
And that is my story.
I love it.
All right. Well, I brought down the room. Can you bring us back up here?
I will try. Now, the first part of my story is actually no murders take place. So,
okay.
So, I mean,
oh, that's right. You said
it's a two-parter.
We have a two-parter.
I try, but yeah.
You are the deep diver of this podcast.
I guess.
You really are.
I guess I am. Okay. You might know who I'm talking about. If you don't, that's fine.
Fake it.
Okay. Do you know the name Dorothy Kilgallen?
I do not.
Okay. Good.
All right. I'm coming in blind. I'm coming in cold here.
So I'm going to start off by saying that this was started by the fact that I have been watching old episodes. I know I get stuck on TVs, on TV shows. I am watching old episodes. Of What's My Line? Now it's old. Now, like, this is 1950.
I do remember. That was when you would bring people out and they would ask yes or no questions.
Yes.
And then you had to try to figure out what they did for a living.
Correct.
I spent many a misspent youth night watching, like, old Game Show Network.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I have seen What's My Line. It's a fun show.
It's a very fun show. So it ran from 1950 to 1967. The only reason why it ended is that the host of the show, he was just done. He was tired of doing it, and I didn't replace him, and that's it. So I've been watching it, and then one of the best panelists is Dorothy Kilgallen. Okay. So Dorothy Kilgallen, she's a journalist, radio show. She had some radio shows. She's an author. She's a media personality and a game show panelist.
So she's one of the people that is trying to guess what somebody else does for a living.
Correct.
All right.
Okay, so she was born. Now, the only reason why I was able to do this story is because she was born in the Midwest.
Hey!
So we're just going to go with that.
That's all right.
It's fine.
We can cheat a little bit. It's our podcast. You're getting this for free, y'all.
She was born Dorothy May Kilgallen, July 3rd, 1913 in Chicago, Illinois.
Oh, okay.
Her parents were James Lawrence Kilgallen and Mary Ahern. They were Irish descent and both Catholic. She also had a younger sister by the name of Eleanor.
Okay.
The family moved around the United States until about 1920. Okay. And in 1920, her father, James, was hired by the International News Service as a roving correspondent for New York City.
Ooh.
So they got to move to New York City.
New York City?
They ended up settling in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
She ended up going to high school, and she graduated from Aramis High in New York, and then she ended up attending 1 year in college in New Rochelle.
Okay.
She ended up dropping out because she took a job as a reporter for the New York Evening Journal.
Good for her. I like this for her.
So the New York Evening Journal that she got her job through, plus the International News Service that her father worked for, were both owned by the Hearst Corporation.
Oh, dear. Okay. So
he owned a lot of newspapers.
She's in journalism, but she's also property of William Randolph.
Correct.
Got it.
The Hearst Corporation owned that paper and also owned the company that her father worked for.
Okay.
Her career, Hearst really liked her. And
God, I was just
No.
Okay.
No, not that kind. Don't worry.
I was like, is she pretty? Was he creepy? Because he's that's a whole other story.
Right. No, he really liked what she wrote.
Good.
So I'm going to give you a picture here. Here's her being a journalist.
Oh, gosh. She kind of she has that, I am pretty, but I also take no shit, and I'm not overly pretty. She gives me Dorothy Parker vibes a little bit.
Yeah, here's like a pretty...
Oh, God, no. Yeah, that's a much more flattering picture. But yeah, she's pretty, but she also has kind of that, something about the eyes and the mouth where it's like, don't mess with me.
Yeah, she's really smart. There's
she's gorgeous. I mean, she's tiny. And,
she's tiny.
And fine-boned and very, very pretty and very much of the time. But she also looks like she could bite you.
Yes, absolutely. So in her career, in 1936, Kilgallen and two other New York reporters were going to compete in a race around the world, and they were only going to take transportation that anybody in the public could take. So not a private airplane or anything. She was the only woman to compete and came in second. It was just kind of reporters going around the world. This is kind of just... add some fun news in the
What year is this?
1936.
1936. Okay. I don't know if that's the same. There was a big car race, but that was to go along the globe. But I don't know if this is the same one.
I don't think so. I think this is just a thing.
Okay.
She wrote a book about it called "Girl Around the World," which inspired the movie "Fly Away, Baby," starring Glenda Farrell.
Okay.
In 1938, November of 1938, she started a daily column in the Hearst New York Journal American called Voice of Broadway. It featured New York show business news and gossip. Also touched on other topics like politics and organized crime. The column reached 146 different newspapers.
Oh my gosh.
So she was starting to get noticed. She moved her parents and her sister from Brooklyn at this point to Manhattan, and she lived with them until 1940.
Okay.
April 6, 1940, she marries Richard Colmar. He's a musical comedian, actor, and singer.
Okay.
So here's a picture of her and him, and that's one of their children.
Okay. He has a billboard-sized forehead.
He does.
And also probably already an advanced case of skin cancer.
Here's a picture of them in a restaurant where the glasses help.
Yeah. No, I was going to say...
He's a nice-looking guy.
It does help. He is a nice-looking guy. He does have a whole lot of forehead, though. Like,
right.
Your ad here.
Your ad here. Exactly. So, they ended up getting married. Richard Colmar, he is known for Knickerbocker Holiday, which is a movie, Too Many Girls. He also...
Which is the problem he had. No, also a movie on that.
They have 3 children. Richard goes by Dickie in 1941, Jill in 1943, and Carrie, Kerry, in 1954.
Too many girls.
So... both Dorothy and her husband also had careers in radio. Dorothy, she had a show. It was called Dorothy Kilgallen's Diary, and that ran in 1945. I'm going to play a clip from it.
Suck it, Bridget Jones.
Oh.
And is transcribed. Dorothy Kilgallen's Diary, the intimate behind-the-scenes story of Broadway's great stars, revealed by the First Lady of Broadway, the famous columnist and radio personality, Dorothy Kilgallen.
Thank you, Kelvin Keach. My diary shows I ran into an old friend of mine in one of the broadcasting studios here in New York. He'd just finished singing on an air show when he came striding down the corridor. He's well set up.
So that is her voice.
She is the voice of the times.
She does. I love her voice.
For the time, yeah.
I love her voice.
Me too.
Now,
well, Janet, I think I'm just going to finish the rest of the podcast talking like this.
So now he also had a show.
What was the name of his show?
Her husband, Richard Dick Colmar, starred as a character in the nationally syndicated crime drama Boston Blackie, which ran from 1941 to 1943. It was written by Jack Boyle, a newspaper editor turned opium addict.
Oh, dear.
Who turned to crime. And
newspaper, I'm sorry.
I know!
Newspaper editor turned opium addict.
So Jack Boyle is a newspaper editor turned opium addict who turned to crime and was serving time.
His resume just keeps like, so, tell me. What were your last 3 positions? Well.
So he was serving time at the Colorado State Penitentiary, and he created Boston Blackie, the character. The character was originally a criminal, but then once radio and TV started to pick up on him, they changed his character, what he was, and they turned him into a private eye. Okay. And the quote, enemy to those who make him an enemy, and friend to those who have no friends. So I will play a little clip from that. Here we go.
You from the 24 smaller stones of the Wentworth collection.
We're going to take it out of Lady Wentworth's home?
Lady Wentworth has only a paste copy of the diamonds in her name. The real diamonds are in the National Vaults. At 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, the diamonds are to be transferred by armored truck from the National Vaults for 2 weeks display at the Manchester Museum.
So that is a little extra.
I know. You do have to love it. You do have to love it.
We do.
I do have to admit, when you said Boston Blackie, I kind of clenched a little bit, thinking that this was terrible.
I thought so. I was like, no, that was just what they called him. That's fine. I know. So April of 1945, Dorothy and her husband, they start to host a weekday radio talk show on WOR 710 AM in New York. I will play a clip from that now.
Okay.
Good morning, darling.
Good morning, sweetie.
I hope you noticed Julius's face when he ushered our guests in this morning.
I did.
Okay.
Well, I guess Julius is a movie fan.
And that's not all. He's a baseball fan.
Yes, and it's certainly written all over him today. Well, it's 8:15, and this is Breakfast with Dorothy and Dick, coming as usual, direct from our apartment on 66th Street in New York.
So
kind of the original, like, Martha Stewart living, like, we're going to bring you into our home.
Right. And so Breakfast with Dorothy and Dick was broadcasted from their 16-room apartment at 640 Park Avenue.
Well, I hope that there's space enough for all of us.
So they would sit down. Sometimes when they would record, because it was breakfast, sometimes they would literally record in their nightgowns or night outfits, around the breakfast table.
Janet, do you want to describe to the listeners what I've got on right now?
Tracy discarded her bra a while ago.
1 minute I walked in the door.
And she has her stretchy pants and her her night slippers
Slippies.
and her t-shirt and of course
my robe.
her robe. So this show that I just played for you, it was mixed entertainment, news and gossip with serious topics as well.
Okay.
They did the show starting in 1945 and they did it until 1963. So they did the show for a long time. Dorothy was really good friends with Frank Sinatra. We're going to start with some things that she kind of wrote some things about.
Oh, dear.
Dorothy and Frank were good friends for several years. And there was a photograph of them even in 1948.
Now, were they just friends?
They were just friends.
Just
friends, yes, exactly.
Because, yeah, Sinatra did have platonic female friends, but then there was also a whole lot of hanky-panky.
And they were friends for several years. There's even a photograph from 1948 during a rehearsal for a radio broadcast.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that does look like a young Frank Sinatra, and he's showing her something he's written. And she's just kind of looking down.
So in 1956, she ends up writing a multi-part article titled The Real Frank Sinatra Story.
Oh,
same picture!
So she burn books him.
Yeah.
Oh my.
It was published in the New York Journal, front page American, and some other of Hearst's newspapers. After the publication, which talked about his ties with the mob, he would make derogatory comments about her physical appearance to nightclub audiences, mostly about how she didn't have much of a chin.
Okay.
She would make fun of the
she
lack
does
of
have
chin.
A weak chin.
She has a tiny chin. I mean,
she does. She has kind of a weaker jawline. I do too. It's all right.
Right.
Like, so and Sinatra is not someone you want to cross for any reason. He got hot immediately, and like he never let go.
Yeah, and that was some of her other reporting on him, like he's a hothead, he's a womanizer, and she just wrote all about him, and so he was just always he would make comments about her often when he would go to clubs to perform. Oh, right. Editor's note. There is an editor's note. See, I left myself notes.
Oh,
I left myself notes.
That's funny.
I'm like, oh yeah, a note. Let's see here.
There isn't an intruder. It's just my robot telling me what the weather is going to be tomorrow because it does that every night.
Right. Here we go. 1 second. If I can't pull it up, it's not happening.
No worries.
That's how. Here we go. Okay. Editor's note. So on the Frank Sinatra story, that front page that I just showed you, once you get there, it says, Dorothy Kilgallen, the New York Journal American's famed voice of Broadway, has done some digging into the flamboyant career of crooner actor Frank Sinatra. What she has learned has turned out to be the real Frank Sinatra story. This is the second article of the series. So yeah, she was gifting the gab. So when she would tell stories, specifically when she wrote about them or if she was on the air, it was like she was telling you the story like she was your gal pal sitting and having tea with you.
And those, I mean, you can see the same thing with, what was it, like Hedda Hopper and a couple of, I mean, that was the particular gift of all of those gossip columnists. It's just like, oh my gosh, you don't really?
Exactly.
Tell me a little bit more, you know? Like, they come on like they're your friend. And then you spill the beans. And the next thing you know, your beans are all over the...
Right. They can be anywhere, right. She ends up in 1950 joining the cast of the brand new TV show that first broadcasted on February 2nd, 1950. It aired live from New York City on CBS until 1967, and the show, as I mentioned before, is What's My Line? So we'll go ahead and play an excerpt of that.
And now, What's My Line? Brought to you by Summit Spray Deodorant. Poof, there goes perspiration. Poof Deodorant Body Powder, the body powder you spray. The Nest Shampoo, the new flowing cream shampoo. All in the first truly functional cosmetic containers. Far easier to use. All created by Dr. Jules Montagne.
I know! Toiletries to come back in these kinds of containers.
Enjoy What's My Line?
Also, I think a deodorant called Stop It is hilarious.
Now, let's meet our award-winning What's My Line panel of well-known personalities whose lines you already know. First, the popular columnist whose voice of Broadway appears in the New York Journal-American and papers coast to coast, Miss Dorothy Kilgallen.
And on my left, the young humorist who has his own television show and is currently in rehearsal with a new Broadway play, The Pink Elephant, Mr. Steve Allen.
Nice.
So, that is What's My Line, yeah. If you ever, they're all on YouTube, by the way, if you ever just want to go and watch them. They're nice.
We can do.
Yes.
Just fun.
They're fun.
If nothing, I could just drift off to sleep listening to that accent.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow.
So she was a panelist on that show for every Sunday for 15 years. Now, there were some shows she missed, you know, from sickness or whatever. The show, it was a regular panel game show. The celebrity panelists question the contestants. They try to figure out their occupation. And then, of course, every episode also had a mystery guest where the panelists were blindfolded. And it was normally somebody the public would know. Like, it could be a movie star. It could be a
somebody
general.
Famous.
Yeah, right.
But the panelist, Janet, I think he meant to say... There was a mystery guest, and the panelists are blindfolded.
I say. The moderator, John Charles Daly,
John Charles Daly? I'm sorry, I'll stop now. I can't promise I'll stop, but I'll stop for now.
John Daly, he was an American journalist, TV anchor, and he also... He was the moderator for the show. There was the regular weekly panelist was, of course, Dorothy Kilgallen, Arlene Francis, who was an actress, radio and TV host, and Bennett Sheff, who was a writer, publisher, and co-founder of Random House. So there were some really smart cookies on the panel. Now, when I watched this show, I'm like, oh my gosh, you can tell Dorothy is so good at asking the right questions. I mean,
completely.
That's why she was like, sometimes you watch and go, how the heck did she guess that? Because she just, that's her job.
Because she's a gossip columnist.
She's really good.
Good at like getting to the kind of heart of things.
Yeah, oh, you're going to give me the information. Even though you don't think you are. And then there was other, of course, panelists who were on and off the show, like you saw Steve Allen, Hal Bach, and Soupy Sales.
I know Soupy Sales.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, not personally.
No.
And not biblically.
No.
God.
So she was so good at her job, she would follow other stories, and then she would have opinions on these stories if she felt like things were not going to go well. Do you remember episode 14 where I talked about Sam Shepard?
Vaguely,
he was the doctor.
Oh, right.
His wife was killed, and he ended up going to trial, but there was such a media circus that eventually, in the end, we find out, like, years and years later, because his son ended up pulling him out of the ground, going, we're getting him tested because there's DNA now. His dad
didn't do it.
He did not do it.
No, I do remember that one.
So,
gosh, episode 14.
Episode 14!
Like 80 years ago.
I know! So, Kilgallen covered this trial. She was shocked by the guilty verdict. She saw big flaws in the prosecution's case. And remember, again, this was a total media circus when this happened. There was a party that she went to. The party was at the Overseas President's Club in New York. And she ends up running into the judge that's going to be running this case. Running the trial, right?
Right.
And they're still choosing people from for the jury of the case. And she ends up, going over there and talking to the judge. And the judge like, he's guilty as hell. So he had made up his mind already.
Right. So there isn't a fair trial.
No, there is not a fair trial. And
does she expose it?
She ends up exposing it.
Good.
So basically what happens is that the judge passes away from old age. He passes away, and then she's just like, you know what? I can't hold on to this anymore. She drops this in one of her columns about, he said that he already made up his mind about this case.
Completely.
So if he's going to pick jury members, he's going to pick ones that are going to go with what he thinks. And so, since the knowledge of the judge is saying this before the grand jury, before he even picks it, once he passed away in 1964 in July, she breaks her silence and says, lets everybody know. And then Judge Weeman, another federal court, he ends up granting habeas corpus. We love those words, right?
That's right.
Petition, and ends up basically Sam Shepard gets released from prison.
Oh my gosh.
So when he gets released, he ends up meeting Dorothy Kilgallen at a late night champagne party in Cleveland. Because that's where he was arrested. Basically, like
I'm sorry, I am taking a moment to picture a late night champagne party in Cleveland. And none of it's good. It's kind of like...
So when she was writing all of this bad stuff about, like, what the heck? She was putting a column. She had a column in the Cleveland newspaper. And the Cleveland newspaper shut her out and removed her column from their newspaper because they didn't like the things she was saying about... she was saying all these things like that was a horrible case. He should be not guilty. Why is he guilty? and then they ended up removing her out of the Cleveland newspaper.
Oh my gosh!
They silenced her in Cleveland because she was saying. But then he's not guilty.
Silenced in Cleveland.
I know. So. I am actually going to stop here because we're about to come to Dorothy's biggest case that she follows.
Okay.
And unfortunately, it takes me down a crazy rabbit hole I did not think we would be doing for this specific podcast, considering it's in the Midwest.
Another two-parter,
but you'll know.
That's okay. No, I'm excited to learn.
You'll know. So that is where we're going to start, and I'm just going to leave it there.
All right.
Well, and please don't read up on it.
I will not. I promise I will sit on my hands and not do it.
Right.
So I'm going to take Janet to the log cabin that I have built out back and make her guess what I do for a living. And then we will be back shortly with What's Nice.
We'll be back with What's Nice.
Hey, Mighty Buddies, Tracey here. Just letting you know that a little comment can make a big difference. And so this is the way that we can grow our listenership and grow our audience and keep bringing you big, muddy stories every week. First of all, a little comment does make a big difference. So wherever it is that you listen, please do leave a comment, even if it's just a tiny one. And also, send any story suggestions that you might have to bigmuddymayhem@gmail.com. And if you want to throw a few bucks in our bucket, we have Buy Me a Coffee, which is our virtual tip jar. Not a monthly commitment, but if you really like the story that you heard this week, maybe just chuck a few dollars our way, and we can use that to continue to produce the podcast.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
And now we are coming back for What's Nice.
What's Nice here.
And I guess you get to start.
I do. Janet, yes. I know that I ended my story with like a little bit of a bummer.
Yes.
And so this is, I will say, this is the second time that my What's Nice here has involved semen. And now I'm going to have the hiccups again. But in North Dakota, they do have a statue, much like they do down on the St. Charles Riverfront. I love this. They said, dogs add so much joy and unconditional love to every aspect of our lives. And so there is in North Dakota in Bismarck, in the town of Washburn, there is a Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center, and they have a 1,400-pound statue.
Oh my God!
Of Seaman the dog. Get to know Lewis and Clark's enormous dog Seaman, is what it says. But he is the true hero of this journey. Lewis was flawed. Clark was flawed. Seaman was a very good boy and did nothing other than just love his people the whole time. And so you can see...
Oh, it's such a pretty dog statue.
This big, giant 1,400-pound statue of Seaman. And he is placed at a historic spot next to the Missouri River.
Okay.
He was it might be the biggest dog statue in the country. Pardon me. And he is 7 foot tall with a circumference of just over 8 feet.
Oh, wow.
So it is short and sweet, but good boy, Seaman.
Yeah.
Good boy.
Good boy. Aww.
And we will share this picture because it absolutely, what I like about this statue is that it captures just the face of like a big, good, dumb.
Yes.
I love you. 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 And you know, if you know Janet and I at all personally, or if you have been listening to the podcast for a while, you will know that we are
big dog people.
Big dog people.
Right.
I mean, I have a whole bunch of asshole cats, but given the choice, like we're both dog people.
Right.
And Seaman is among the best of dogs.
Right, absolutely.
And I am so sorry that he lost his person.
Right.
But I am so glad to hear that like over 200 years later, we still remember And we all still want to give him a cookie.
No.
And we all still want to, like, scritch him on the head.
Right.
And we've got Bluebell, who is laying down right next to us at our feet.
Puppy.
As she is every week.
Right.
And so, yes. So, semen is what's nice here. Now over to you, Janet.
Thanks. Oh, so I'm going to go with something in Chicago. Next week I probably won't. But, she was born there, so I'm going with Chicago. We have the City Mini Golf. It's mini golf next to one of the most iconic skylines in the world. They're closed right now, and they will reopen back in April of 2025. They have new Chicago-themed obstacles added in their mini golf course. So here's a picture of the skyline.
Oh my. Okay.
So mini golf.
Chicago does have an amazing skyline.
Yes,
they
it
really
does. And then we have, here's some of the things that you get to, do your putt through.
Oh my God. So there's a White Sox one,
right.
And there's one that looks sort of like the bridge over the river.
Right.
Is it the Ohio or is it Chicago River?
Right, yeah. And then, of course, we have the Chinatown. We have
and one for the Cubs, which we will begrudgingly support as St. Louis girlies.
Yeah, and see, people just playing mini golf.
Fun.
So, yeah, I was like, I love mini golf. I've always loved mini golf, yeah. Basically, if you want to go, let's see here. Prices are basically general admission is $12. There's a discount if you're military teachers, seniors, first responders. Children 4 and under, they pay their age.
That's cute.
And you can get a season's pass for $65. But yeah, it's, here's one of the places where you can play through. It's a hot dog.
Oh my gosh! Oh my goodness. It's Portillo's, which is the Chicago hot dog and sausage place that they have everywhere.
And it's located at Maggie Daly Park at 337 East Randolph Street in Chicago, Illinois.
And you can literally hit your mini golf ball through a giant hot dog.
Exactly. I mean, come on.
What's not to like?
What's not to like? So that is my What's Nice.
Fantastic. Wow, well, my goodness, we have had a pretty good night. And
yes, we have.
A couple of stories here. I cannot wait to hear your part 2. I am going to have to literally, duct tape my hands to keep me from Googling to find out the rest of it.
Right. Oh, my God.
But, I will be here next week, and I hope that you all will be, too, because...
Yeah.
we need to know how this ends.
We want to know. You want to know what happened to Dorothy. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to let you know in advance, it is unsolved. But...
Eventually we will get back to some solved cases.
I know! Maybe I'll make that my mission after next week.
But,
so I think
we have, tippy-tappy puppies that I'm going to feed. And we have had a couple of good stories, and we're going to let y'all go.
Yeah.
And see you again next week. Right. But there is one thing that I think we need to remember to do.
Oh, is that something about stay Midwest nice?
It is to stay Midwest nice.